Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd of the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, this epic quest of awesomeness is our resident anime goddess, the Cat. Cat, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. And in our correspondence corner, we've got Brian. So, Brian, what the fuck, Brian? What did I tell you about playing Overwatch while you're on the company dime?
God, just get on the point! It says defend! Defend the point! Big bold letters on the screen! What? Huh? Hi.
Are we gonna have to suspend your internet privileges again?
Well, don't worry, give it a few minutes, it'll go down.
I wonder if the wireless controller works in the pain glove.
Well, I use a mouse and keyboard, because I'm an elitist prick.
Oh.
Which is really weird that that's not coming. Anyway.
So, same question. Does the wireless mouse... Can you still play if we leave your computer stationed where it is, but you still have your mouse as we drag you kicking and screaming into the pain glove?
We'll run the experiment eventually.
But we'll make John do it.
Anyway, we got a lot of show for you tonight. Although we did make kind of a bit of a boo boo. Our original planned discussion was to discuss Finding Dory. However, as the time machine has not yet completed, or indeed able to function without the time traveler returning as a complete human being and not a inside-out abomination unto the Lord, we're going to have to wait and see it with everybody else when it comes out this weekend. So, we decided instead to do something a little safer, and we're going to talk about the 20th anniversary of the Pokémon franchise, which is a discussion that I am really looking forward to because I'm a huge Poké-nut from way back, and there's a lot that I had to say on this subject, so I'm really looking forward to this. But, of course, there is procedure to follow, so we're going to begin, as always, with Ask a Geek, and we got a few questions here. First one is for Kat, and oddly enough, it's from another Christine. And she asked, as a Studio Ghibli fan, what are your thoughts on Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch?
The irony being that I'm not a Studio Ghibli fan. I've never really particularly enjoyed any of their films. That's not to say I think they're bad. I think they're magnificent films. I just don't get any entertainment out of them. That being said, Ni no Kuni is gorgeous. A really, really great game. I haven't played it. I've actually just watched my roommate play through it because I'm also not a gamer. So this question is just bonkers all around for me. But I really like the game. Well, at least watching my roommate play the game. I think the characters are all really fun and interesting. I like the settings of everything. I really like the story. It's all just all around really cool game. I heard they were going to make a sequel. And that also looks really cool. So I'm kind of excited to see somebody play the sequel. Not me, of course, but somebody play the sequel.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's see. Next question here comes from, from Paul, and it is for Brian. And he asked, who would you see playing Cable in a Cable and Deadpool film? And I guess we'll just open this question up to all three of us. So, Brian, let's start with you.
Well, I feel like they've started that. They mentioned Dolph Lundgren, and the moment you mention Dolph Lundgren, you gotta get Dolph Lundgren. I mean, that's how things go now. Like that is how things should work for this film franchise. Oh, that's the character you want? Boom, that's the actor you're gonna get.
See, I don't know, because I recently saw the Dolph Lundgren Punisher film, and
That's what really. So you're not gonna be able to take him seriously in a Deadpool movie?
Well, the thing is Cable's the serious character. He's the straight man. But once you hear Dolph Lundgren shout in his thick accent, "The guilty must be punished," you can't really look at him straight again. You just kind of,
Listen, all I'm saying is that Ivan Drago would be an excellent Cable.
My answer is Ron Perlman. I want to see a Ron Perlman Cable. I think that would be amazing. What about you, Kat? Who would you pick for Cable?
I think if Ron Perlman wants to do it, then I'm all for that. I know other actors would probably like to do it, but Ron Perlman is really gung-ho about it, and I think he would actually do really great at the job.
Okay.
Says the girl who doesn't really know very much about cable.
Trust me, the comics don't know very much about cable anymore.
Yeah, and the question's been put to me by a couple friends, like, so you wouldn't go see a Cable solo film? Like, the thing about Cable is I've never liked him unless he was paired up with Deadpool, because otherwise I just don't find him a very interesting character, because he just, I don't know, when I was reading comics, Cable was in his future time-traveling mutant messiah phase, and I don't know if he ever got over that Jesus complex that he had. So I never really found that a very interesting character. But no, if Ron Perlman was cast to play Cable in a Cable solo film, I'd be all up-ons on that. So a Ron Perlman Cable film, that would be my pick. Let's see, and here's a question here from Peter, and it is for me, and he asked what I think, if I've played Overwatch, and if so, what I think about it. But I don't play online shooters, but given the fact that he's still playing it while we're in the middle of our recording session, despite repeated warnings against doing so, I think we're going to turn our gaze to Brian and ask him what he thinks of it.
Listen, this Hanzo prick's going down. Like, I'm sick of that fucking phrase.
Your laptop is going down the stairwell if you don't get off that goddamn game in the middle of recording.
Yeah, well, okay, pause, I guess. Well, it's not really a pause. It's an online game. All right, whatever. I'm probably going to die a couple times.
Way to ruin the bit by trying to do something you can't actually do.
Hey. I'm salvaging.
Hey, not with that attitude.
Yeah,
you
seriously,
can't.
yeah, you jerk. Let me finish my shit. Anyway. So, like, I like Overwatch for what it is. It's just a team-based shooter, kind of like Team Fortress 2. It's ironic, though, because, like, the Blizzard had put together this wonderful set of characters, this wonderful world, all this big story involved going with it, and backstories and character relationships that you never get to actually play in the game, because it is a team-based shooter. So your different maps usually involve capturing a point, defending a point, or escorting a thing to another side of the map. I mean, it's fun, but there's just a point in time going, there's obviously more here they're not letting on to.
Yeah, I mean, it looks to me, it looks like a very well-designed game. I don't play online shooters. It's just not something that's up my alley. Now, maybe if they actually came out with a single-player mode where I could actually explore the world and the story, then yeah, I'd probably give it a whirl. But as of right now, it's just not something that really interests me. But it's apparently gets hooks in Brian pretty deep because he's still fucking playing it.
Well, listen. I'm almost level 23. Give me a couple of matches, and I'll be all right.
Give you a couple of cracks to the head. That's what I'll give you. All right. And that's about all the Ask a Geek questions that we have for this week. As always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdofthethirdpower.com. We love getting your questions, so go ahead and send them in, and maybe we'll get your question read on the air. We love getting your questions, love answering them, so get them in. And also, if you're one of our Facebook faithful, we have a permanent Ask a Geek thread on our Facebook that we also take questions from, so go ahead and get those in.
So now we're going to move on to our wonderful discussion topic. And can you believe this? It's been 20 years, and Pokemon is still a relevant franchise right now. A franchise that has existed with almost the same type of game mechanics every single other year that's coming out. Can you guys believe this? Because I can.
Wow, you just sound like just so derisive of the whole thing. Like it's personally offended you in some way.
It hasn't personally offended me. Listen, also, I'll tell you a little bit of a backstory here. Is that Pokemon has been around for as long as almost I've been alive, basically. I didn't actually play my first Pokemon game until Soul Silver, and the only reason I played that because I was stuck in an airport and I needed something to do. Let's start from the beginning, shall we? What's going for the inspiration of Pokemon? How did this franchise start? How did we get to the point where there's a Pikachu army in Japan?
Okay, well, the Pokemon series was created by let me get the name right here because I'm always terrible with Japanese names. Satoshi Tajiri. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But anyway, he first thought of the initial concept in around 1989 or 90 when the Game Boy was first released, and it was based on a childhood hobby that he had. He would collect insects. And and he wanted to come up with something, a game that would allow players to do something similar for kids who lived in urban areas where they weren't able to collect a whole lot of bugs, aside from fruit flies and mosquitoes and whatever nasty form of spider lives in Japan. I don't know, probably some kind of hairy tarantula or something. I don't know.
There's some pretty scary ones.
Yeah.
Did he make these bugs fight? Because that is also something that's that's been a part of the Pokemon franchise. So was that...
Look, if there's one thing that I've learned in regards to the creative minds of Nintendo, it's not to look too closely at where their ideas come from, because you may learn uncomfortable truths. So, but that was the basic concept. Was inspired by his love of collecting bugs, and he wanted to come up with something similar to that concept. And so in where was the date? Yeah, 1990. Okay, so in 1995, late in the life cycle of the original Game Boy, the first Pokemon games were released, and they just took the world by storm. I can't think of any, not since Super Mario Brothers in 1983 has a Japanese produced, has a piece of Japanese culture taken the U.S. by such a complete and utter storm as Pokemon. Like, the only things that I can think of that came anywhere near close to this were like Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball. Those are the only two things I can think of that came anywhere near close to being the cultural phenomena that Pokemon was when it was first released. And what made it stand out from its contemporaries was they came up with this brilliant idea of, in the original games, Red and Green, Red and Blue here in the U.S., and eventually Yellow, there were 150 individual Pokemon. Now some of you people that haven't been playing for as long as I have, you may be thinking, 150, you must have caught them all easily. I would strike you for your ignorance, but I have not yet manifested the ability to direct my will physically through the internet, so know that I look upon you with scorn. But, you're
very violent today. I want to point that out. You're threatening me. You're threatening the audience. But to go back to the release, so I don't know much about how the release happened. Now you mentioned the sort of combination of this is sort of like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon, but Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon, they sort of existed in Japan long before they made the travel to the States and had their impact. So Pokemon didn't exist in Japan for a while, then eventually made its way. It was launched pretty much worldwide at the same time, correct?
Pretty close too. I remember reading a preview article for Pokemon, or Pocket Monsters as it was called in Japan. I want to say about a year before it was released in the U.S. But what made it stand out was there were several things that made it stand out. First, as I said, they released two versions of the game because you couldn't get all 150 monsters in one game. So you had to trade with other players for Pokemon that you couldn't get, and you could also build your own team and have battles with other players. So there was a social concept that was what I would call the first truly socialized video game, because it encouraged you to go out and seek out other players to trade and to battle with. And I also kind of there's a very cynical part of me in the back of my brain that thinks that it was also a very cheap cash grab to try and get rid of all the Game Boy link cables that were sitting gathering dust in a warehouse in Japan. Because let me tell you, before Pokemon came out, you could count on one hand the number of people who owned a link cable in the entire U.S. Then Pokemon comes out, and suddenly they're just flying off the shelves. You couldn't find them. Because in the old days, if you want to do multiplayer on a handheld, you had to have... You not only each had to have a system in the game, but you also had to run a cable between the two systems in order to actually play the game.
Not like a long cable, mind you. This was pretty short. You had to be a good friend with the person that you're doing this with.
Oh yes, you had to hope that they were intimately acquainted with soap and/or deodorant. That's how close you had to get. And it just, this was something that the gaming world had never seen before, and it just took off like wildfire. I would love to have been in the elevator when Tajiri made the elevator pitch. Because it's one of those things where you look at it on paper and you hear the concept and you roll it around in your head and you think, this is the absolute dumbest fucking thing in the entire world. There is no way anyone would ever buy this or throw money at it. But Pokemon is right now the second best-selling video game franchise of all time. Only Mario has made dollar for dollar more than the Pokemon franchise has had, and only barely.
Well, a lot of that comes from hindsight look, because a lot of things in the gaming world I've noticed, you have this weird hindsight about certain news and certain games where a game that looks like a great franchise ends up being a dud only a couple years later, and a game you never thought would actually go anywhere suddenly is the biggest thing in the whole world, to the point of having toys coming out with it as well, and animes upon animes as well coming over into the States, mangas and everything like that. So it sort of built its franchise almost overnight. It feels like there's like pre-Pokemon and post-Pokemon. Like, that is sort of how it works.
Yeah, and another thing that made the game stand out was, they were easy to learn. You had your monster. Each monster could only learn 4 attacks, and each attack had its own, effect. And that was all that you really had to worry about. But if anyone could pick up and learn that. Okay, one monster, 4 attacks, you pick an attack, there you go. And, fire beats grass, grass beats water, water beats fire. Okay, rock, paper, scissors, okay. Pretty much anybody can get that. But if you stuck around and actually dug beneath the surface, you suddenly found that there was so much more to this system, and it became something infinitely complex and customizable. It was one of the few games at the time where you could pretty literally tailor the game to how you wanted it to play, and nothing else like it existed at the time, and very little has existed like it since. Well, I can't really say that, because in the late 90s there were a glut of Pokemon clones. You had Digimon, which actually predated Pokemon by a couple years with the little Tamagotchi-like digital pets. There were so many different Poke clones. It was obscene, but none of them, with the exception of Digimon, had the staying power or still remembered today. Although you're still seeing a few odd attempts in there, like you got this new one, Yokai Watch, that just came out that's apparently really popular. I don't know much about it. But the other thing that made Pokemon such a big phenomenon, especially in the States, was the anime series that came with it. And Kat, I know that you're not a huge fan of the show. I don't know how much of it you've seen, but I know that you can speak a bit to the effect that the show had on the anime scene in the U.S.
Oh yeah, it I guess it must have aired on Saturday morning when all these kids were watching cartoons. So even if you weren't playing the game or the card game, then you were probably watching the cartoon. And it sort of brought to people's attention the concept of anime. A lot of people had been watching it as Sailor Moon or Dragon Ball or one of those shows, but a younger audience was the target for Pokemon. And so it was one of those shows that sort of introduced a younger generation to anime. And it kind of made people realize that these cartoons that their kids were watching weren't like other cartoons. They weren't normal cartoons. They were different somehow.
It wasn't just Anvil falls on head, Coyote goes flat.
Right.
Oh, wait, you had Team Rocket.
Yes. Yes. So once Pokemon got popular, other similarly targeted children's anime started coming over. Then you'd have Digimon, and God, so many came over targeted at children pretty much because of Pokemon and the popularity thereof.
Although I can think of one sin that can be laid at the Pokemon anime's feet that I'm sure many anime fans have yet to forgive it for, and that's that Pokemon was the anime that made 4Kids a household name, and all that entailed.
Yes. And the thing about Pokemon is that I think some people got a little confused. Like, some kids would watch it and then not understand the reason why episodes were skipped or strange cuts and edits were made, and it's because the Japanese children are a little more capable of handling certain things than American people give their children credit for. So there are whole episodes that were skipped just because of the content of it. So I know a lot of my friends who grew up watching it were like, what happened here? And they're like, oh, those were episodes that were left out. So it's kind of weird because we don't ever get the full effect of Pokemon, the anime series anyway, because we've never gotten to see all of it here.
Although a lot of the cut episodes have since been released. Although there's one that Nintendo said is not ever coming to the U.S., and that's Electric Soldier Porygon, which is the one that made headlines when it gave hundreds of Japanese children fucking seizures.
Yeah.
And that became such a big deal. As I remember, that joke came into the subculture and pop culture references. The Simpsons, of all people, referenced that episode when they visited Japan.
Caesar robots.
Yeah. So it's sort of amazing that even as an anime form in pop culture, it's not only seeped into Japan, it's seeped in the U.S. as well very quickly. Very like a sponge to water kind of thing. To the point of, to my knowledge, the show's still running. Like, every game has another series, and we all stare at Ash going, you are the worst fucking trainer in the history of this franchise.
I want to know why he's still 10 years old. Go look on YouTube. Someone's actually calculated the amount of time that should logically have passed given the time of each episode. Ash should be like 15 by now, but he's still fucking 10 years old. Despite the fact that in the show they have at times explicitly marked the passing of years. So I'm convinced that Ash is just a Time Lord.
So getting off that subject a little bit, another kind of impact that it had here that we haven't talked about yet was the card game. Now, I know people who watched the show but didn't play the handheld games. They actually only played the card games, and I learned about it from the card games first from my friends who played them rather than the show. I didn't even know there were handheld games. I honest to God thought that the card game came first. But that definitely put a precedent out there for these kinds of card games for younger kids. Like Magic might be a little above some kids' heads, but Pokemon was easier, and that paved the way for Yu-Gi-Oh!
Oh yeah, and not just for little kids either. I mean, the genius of the card game was it was easy to learn. You know, if you could pick it up and understand the mechanics, it was easy to learn. But there was behind it again an infinitely customizable and infinitely complex and infinitely rewarding system if you had the drive to pick it up and learn it. And it got a lot of kids in trouble in school when I was growing up. The Pokemon card game. I actually. This is a story that I don't think I've ever told on the show, but I actually got the first time I was ever suspended from school. It was because I was running a gambling ring around the Pokemon card game. we would hold like mini tournaments over the lunch period, and I would take bets. And of
course you would.
And I at one point I made I think it was $70. In one lunch period just from the bets, and that was the day the principal caught wind of it, and I got suspended. When my dad found out about it, he said, I don't know whether to ground you for life or take you to Vegas.
Well, I'm not sure if taking you to Vegas is going to help, because you're the one in charge of the money. That's why you had the $70. You weren't the one actually playing anything. You were getting other people to do it. You should be running the casino, not playing in one.
So, but yeah, it was, and again, it paved the way for so many things that came afterward. You know, we talk about, Yu-Gi-Oh, big, huge thing. That was possible because of the success of the Pokemon card game. And it's another one of the big success stories. There have been there have been trading card games that have come and gone and, been flash in the pans or maybe lasted for a year before they got discontinued. but the Pokemon card game is still going on strong. I think it's one of only 3 that I can think of that has lasted for longer than a decade, and the other 2 are Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh!
It's in you kind of look at if you look at a franchise, I've noticed, especially nowadays since tabletop gaming has gained popularity, that if you could make a game out of it, be it a board game or card game or anything, it's fun, it can continue. That sort of adds on to the longevity of the franchise as a whole, because the name is still out there, people are still enjoying it. I will say, like, I've never played the card game, but I did watch last year when I was at San Japan. 2 of the guys I was working with were like, just bored. It was the end of like the weekend. It was like a Sunday, and they just looked at each other and say, "Hey, you want to get a match? Yeah, sure, get a match." So all out of nowhere, these guys just pull out their cards and shuffle, and everything's all set and ready to go. And I'm watching them going, "How is this going to?" He's like, "Wait, see, I have this and this, and I want to do this and this and this and this, and I'm going this and this and this, and I win." I was like, "What the fuck just happened?"
Yeah, there's still a huge competitive scene surrounding the Pokemon card game. If you go on YouTube and look up a guy called the J-Wits, most of his videos are Pokemon related. He's actually done like workshop videos on like card deck strategies, and like he's really talented guy at this like really informed. Like you can tell this is a guy who knows exactly what he's talking about when he does these workshops. It's phenomenal. But it's like, you know, this was something that was so unprecedented, and it was such... I think that the American culture didn't really know what to make of it at the time when it first appeared. You know, I remember reading an article in Electronic Gaming Monthly. Haha, that dates me pretty well.
You read a magazine.
I not only remember, but I read gaming magazines. Yes, I remember EGM when it was awesome. And there was an article in their Pokemon issue about this church pastor who had done like a whole sermon, like Jack Chick style, on the evils of Pokemon because he thought that it you know, promoted witchcraft and, you know, and evolution. I'm just like, you know, it was, and this is like just after the Columbine thing had happened. So, you know, how video games were affecting our kids was very much in the public consciousness. You know, Jack Thompson was running around. You know, he didn't quite reach the levels that he had in the early 2000s, but, you know, he was getting his engine running. You know, so here comes this video game from Japan about, let's be totally honest, glorified dogfights. And, you know, imagine being a parent in the 90s and looking at this and not having any idea of what it is. And again, it's one of those things like, you know, we look at it now and it's like, oh, you know, it's a pretty easy concept. Guy goes around collecting little monsters that he uses in battle. But, you know, you try explaining to your parents back, if we try to explain to our parents back in the 90s, they looked at us like we had 2 heads. You know.
Well, people fear what they don't understand, to steal a quote that more famous people have used.
Like, if you go back and you watch the Chin Pokemon episode of South Park, that's not too far off, aside from the whole, you know, the Japanese wanting to bomb Pearl Harbor bit. That's not too far off from how America reacted to Pokemon when it first came out. It was just utter... If you weren't, like, wholeheartedly buying into it, you were utterly confused.
So that kind of bringing that up, that since this is an anniversary, essentially, you know, 20 years, 20 years, correct?
Yep.
So there's a lot of anniversaries going on this year. It's hard to keep track of them, but yeah, so 20 years of Pokemon. How is that? Like, why has it lasted that long? What is the appeal? Is it just because, like, it is kind of simplified? Is that every couple of years we have literally a new generation coming up going, oh yeah, I'm going to play this game, or maybe fans of it before that lost track of it pick it back up again? Like that one webcomic that I remember reading where it was an elementary school, it was like Pokemon, yay! Middle school, Pokemon, boo! College, Pokemon, yay! Like, like it had that sort of wave effect.
Which, you know what, that exactly describes like my experience with Pokemon growing up, because, like, you know, in elementary and middle school it was the shit. Then you went into high school and it was like, oh god, Pokemon's stupid, it's for babies. Yeah. Then I graduate from high school and I start going to college. Everybody's playing Pokemon again, and it's like, I don't know. It was like I was like, there was this switch that went off. Where it's like those 4 years, like, oh, geek culture, oh, it's so stupid. Then you get into college, it's like, yeah, geeks, fucking awesome. Yeah, Pokemon's great, you know. But I think, honestly, the thing that really gave Pokemon its appeal was something beyond the games themselves. I think it's the fact that it's something that people, can connect over. It was, like I said, it's a socialized game, and it's something that people, from now, originally just in your school area, but now people across the world with the advent of the internet can connect over. Another thing that I don't think I mentioned was that when Pokemon first came out, the internet was first starting to become a big thing. And there were all these Pokemon message boards, speculating about what was coming in the future, what was coming in gold and silver. Until the day I die, I will look at Meryl as Peekaboo, because I remember when that was the first image release of Pokemon Gold and Silver. That was the first Pokemon we saw, and nobody knew what the fuck it was called. It just looked like a blue Pikachu. And there were all of these rumors floating around, people discussing and theorizing, and now people all over the world are able to connect over this. There's a trailer that was released recently for the new games, Pokemon Sun and Moon. And the commercial basically follows this young Japanese boy who's moved with his family to Hawaii, and he doesn't really, he doesn't have any friends. He has trouble, he doesn't speak English very well, so he has trouble, communicating and making friends. And, he winds up going into a game store and buying the new Pokemon game. He's kind of walking around the playground, and he sees another kid playing Pokemon, and he just runs up with a big grin on his face, holds up his DS to show that he's playing Pokemon, and the other kid is just like, "Oh yeah, Pokemon, come on, why sit down, let's have fun, let's play together." I think that really encapsulates what has given Pokemon its appeal. Is it's something for people to connect over. It's like Star Wars or Star Trek or anime in general or comic books. It's something that people can create a community around and build friendships off of. And I think that really is what gives it its lasting appeal.
Because one of the things I brought it up earlier, and it's a criticism of the series, is that despite the fact that we've gotten new Pokemon over the years, and we still have the same Pokemon or other different types of Pokemons in movies, the games themselves, the game's mechanics have not really changed. There's never been a drastic overhaul of anything. I think the most drastic overhaul at one point was like team battles, where you could have not just 2 Pokemon fighting, but 4 Pokemon fighting at the same time.
Here's the thing you got to remember: the mechanics behind Pokemon, they're deceptively simple. Yeah, at first glance, like I said, it looks like it's easy to learn, but if you dig past that, there's an infinitely complex system back there if you're willing to sit and learn it. And I feel like that to try and make significant alterations to that, would cause lasting damage to that formula, because it would be almost like knocking over a row of dominoes. You can't really make any changes to that formula without drastically changing the system.
Now, how do you explain the several different spin-off games that we've had? So we've had the main Pokemon, which has almost always been universally a portable game. But then you had several often, like Pokemon Arena, Pokemon Battle, Pokemon Snap, Pokemon, it was a time where it seemed like Pokemon could oversaturate itself just with these different spin-offs and everything. But again, it might have oversaturated, but it hasn't really affected the longevity of the franchise. Is that because the main game is still the go-to, and these side games are just the salt and pepper?
Yeah, the main games are and always have been the meat and potatoes of the franchise. But at the same time, we talked a bit in the Sonic anniversary about how malleable the character of Sonic the Hedgehog is. There's that same malleability with Pokemon. You can come up with something, as down-to-earth and kid-friendly as Hey You Pikachu or Pokemon Snap, or something that, sort of the more mature gamers can enjoy, like Pokken Tournament. Which that blew my mind when I first heard about it. It was like, okay, it's a Pokemon game, but it's a Tekken style fighter, and it actually works. It's such a malleable property that you can do just about anything with it, and not if it'll either work really well, or if it doesn't work, then hey, it's not really going to do a whole lot of lasting damage to the brand, because the core of the series is so strong and so polished to a mirror shine.
So
if that makes any sense.
That makes sense. I'm going to pose a question to Kat, because she's more of a worldly traveler than we are. And so, do you think now, because we've been speaking very, very exclusively with the U.S., because that's what we're with. So in Japan, like I mentioned before, there is that giant, almost Pikachu army. Do you ever fear that in Japan itself it might be waning, but the only reason it's still going is because of the U.S. scene, or is it just as strong as Japan? In Japan, I mean.
Oh, I think it's definitely still going strong in Japan. I don't know as much about the Japanese gaming scene, but Pikachu, very specifically, is an excellent marketing tool. Kind of like Hello Kitty or Doraemon or something. It's something that's kid-friendly, and you can put it on just about anything. And because of the merchandising aspect of it, I don't really feel like the Pokemon franchise will ever be in any danger in Japan, as long as people keep finding Pikachu cute.
Fascinating. So, we are now on the cusp of 2 more Pokemon games coming out.
Well, hang on. While we're still on the topic of the lasting appeal, there's one other thing that I want to bring up.
Now, what is this one other thing you want to bring up? So don't interrupt me again, you jackass.
Well, the one last thing that I want to bring up is another unique mechanic that I have not seen in any other game, and that's since the Game Boy Advance games, you have been able to bring your Pokemon from one handheld generation into the next. Like some of the Pokemon that I have in my game, I've had all the way back since Fire Red and Leaf Green in 2004, and I've moved them from game to game, and I have kept them with me for more than a decade. And I think that's something else that kind of provides that a huge appeal to the series is, it's one of the few game series where we can actually feel like we own a part of it, like a part of it is truly ours. And someone posted something on Facebook a couple years ago that I thought was really profound, that in a few decades' time, we might be leaving our Pokemon to our children in our wills. You might be saying, "And to my son Charles, I leave all of my Pokemon. May they bring you as much joy as they brought me." And I think that is, I think that's kind of a really powerful concept. The concept of having actual player ownership of a portion of the game, to actually have a piece of it be ours. If that makes any real sense.
No, it's fascinating, because I forget that, because again, I've only played maybe like 2. I played Soul Silver, and then I played Y. The only reason I played Y because it had a big elk on it, and I was like, the other one has a dragon. That's boring. But it's very interesting you sort of bring that up. So, as I was saying before, we have 2 more iterations of the franchise coming out later this year. Later this year? Is it this year or next year?
Yep, this November.
Yeah, Brian doesn't keep track of a lot of these news like he should. Anyway, so what's the future of Pokemon? Is it just sort of kind of going with the flow that they've been doing right now? Just keep releasing every couple of years, 2 games, maybe remaking some of the older games, kind of giving them a facelift, bringing them back? Because you have to fear that eventually they're going to run out of monster concepts and Pokemon concepts. I mean, I love some of the characters that I had when I was doing Y, but some of them did feel a little, let's say, basic in terms. So where's the franchise going? What does the future hold?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's going to go away anytime soon. Nintendo have always been really good about ensuring that the core of their product stays strong. There could be an argument made that they could maybe stagger out the releases a little more, put a little more effort into the design. I know a lot of people weren't happy with Black and White's monster designs. God knows I wouldn't. But I don't see Pokemon going the way of like Assassin's Creed, where it just becomes so overdone that people are finally just like, oh god, another Assassin's Creed, here we go. I don't see Nintendo just kind of half-assing it. As far as beyond the core games, the big one that everyone is talking about right now is Pokemon Go, which is the alternate reality cell phone game that they're developing, where you're actually going to be able to go out into the real world and catch Pokemon in this alternate reality game. And that, I think, is, again, is going to be, I think that's going to be a huge thing. I'm willing to put in writing that I think Pokemon Go is going to be as big a phenomena as the original Red and Green games were back in the 90s.
I'm scared about Pokemon Go.
And again, because of just the idea of being able to go out into the world and connect with people over this shared interest. I am a little afraid of of the possibilities of how they might monetize it. I really don't want to see it become, one of those microtransaction driven games. I really don't want to see it be sort of a pay to win model. But Nintendo's been in this business for 3 decades now, and I don't think that they would just throw this out there as a cheap cash grab. I think that they value their brand too highly to just half-ass it. So I really think that they're working on something special with Pokemon Go.
That's not what scares me, because that's sort of a business discussion. What scares me is that I'm gonna have this game, right? It's gonna be on my phone. I'm gonna be at work, and I'm gonna suddenly get I'm like, there's a Squirtle over there, but I can't go over there. But there's a Squirtle over there.
I thought you were gonna make the stupid, tired old joke that someone's gonna break into your house because there's an Arceus hiding in your closet.
No, I think my fear is that I'm the one doing the breaking and entering. It's just like there's a Ghastly, but that's someone's car. They'll understand.
But I really think that is going to be a paradigm changer. I really think it is, and again, it's just I think just the connection that people are going to be able to form over that, like and that Nintendo is aware of that, and that they're playing to that. Like if you go and you watch the Pokemon Go trailer, they're not emphasizing like, oh, you'll be able to catch this Pokemon and that Pokemon. What they're playing to is the idea of, sharing this experience with like, your kids or your family members, or, making, using it to bond with and make friends with new people. They're really playing up the social connection aspect of it in the trailer. And I'm going to be honest, I have a hard time watching the trailer without getting a little teary-eyed. It's just that, it's just that awesome. But, that's me. My cold black heart has to beat occasionally.
Well, what I find kind of interesting is that they, in terms of future, because the big thing everyone's on now is VR. Like that's what everyone sort of has their eyes on, and it feels like Nintendo, maybe they'll do VR, but they feel like at least for Pokemon Go, they skip that. They're like virtual reality. Brian can't talk. We're gonna do almost actual reality. You will actually get to go out and see these things and catch these things. Like screw putting a headset on. Move, talk.
And you think about that and how unusual that is in the gaming industry at large. But when you look at it in terms of how it relates to the Pokemon franchise itself, it makes perfect goddamn sense that they would go that direction. And like I said, I'm really interested in seeing where that goes. The only other Pokemon we talked about is Detective Pikachu, and that's only because of all the petitions to get Danny DeVito to voice the character in the game. Which I'm not gonna lie, if they actually got Danny DeVito to voice Pikachu and I can't get getting tongue tied. If they actually got Danny DeVito to voice Detective Pikachu, try and say that 5 times fast. You just can't do it. Either way, if they managed to do it, it would be a day one purchase.
So Detective Pikachu, does Detective Pikachu talk? Is that what's happening here?
That's apparently what the story is. Yes.
So he doesn't go Pika Pika?
Weird.
No, he is actually going to be speaking the King's English.
Because I feel as like a noir with Pokemon, the fact that he's to say Pika Pika in that very noir style is even better than having Danny DeVito.
Pika 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 Pikachu Pika Pika.
He smokes a cigarette. Pikachu.
But yeah, like I said, I don't see Pokemon going away anytime soon. That's just the be all and end. I don't see it going away anytime soon, and I don't see it I honestly don't see it as, a lot of people talk about, it's waning, it's getting old, not a lot of people are, into it anymore. I don't see that. And, one of the things that amazes me about Pokemon is, the same thing that amazes me about comic book fans or anime fans or science fiction fans or tabletop gaming fans. It's the passion that people show over this. There are people who have, it's like Harry Potter or, Lord of the Rings. There are people who their entire circle of friends has been built around this property. And I think that, something like that can bring people together and form those kinds of friendships, I think is really special. And, I'm glad to be able to live in a world where that kind of thing exists that can bring people together like that. Sounds overly sappy, but there it is. It's something we can all appreciate. I think we can all appreciate that.
I'll agree with you on that one. So, as we sort of wind down, and I really can't follow up the sappiness there, so we're going to wind things down. Now, the next question is a big question. Now, it is actually, I believe, a question we've been asked before, but we're going to reiterate it here. Who is your favorite Pokemon? Kat, go now.
Oh my god, I don't have one because I never watched it or played it or anything. But if I had to pick one just based on looks, cute factor, cool factor, Umbreon.
Okay.
I was trying to see if I can catch her off guard, but I almost got her.
Oh, no. You're not going to be able to catch her off guard.
Well, so we got her. So Gonzo,
what's yours, smart ass?
Well, I'm the host. I go last, so fuck you. You're going now. I'm in charge.
Mine, my favorite Pokemon ever is the level 91. It's now level 91 Electivire that I raised from an Elekid all the way back in Fire Red. That's my go-to. It always has a place on my team. It's my buddy. It's my Chewbacca, and he ain't going nowhere. He's always going to be with me.
Oh, very nice. So I mentioned mine before. I have a good close second. I feel, and this is where I sort of feel like an a-hole, is that the reason my favorite one is Squirtle, is Absolute Squirtle, is not for reasons of I've always had a Squirtle on my team, but not for that. It's because when he evolves into a giant turtle tank. Like, that is the most superficial reason to like anything. I realized that. And then when he had a Mega Evolution and became a Mega Tank, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Now, my very close second, though, is Lincario. And the
Lincario?
Did I say it wrong?
Lucario.
Whatever.
Lincario is the host of Atop the Fourth Wall.
No, that's Linkara. Haha, now who's wrong?
You both are. Now shut up and continue.
But because I consider him the David Carradine of Pokemon. That's the kind of reason I like him. He's very slow moving. He's got a fireball. I was like, this guy. I like this guy.
Alrighty. Okay. Well, that about wraps up. That's about all the time we have for this episode. So, thank you as always for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this discussion. I know I certainly had a ball talking about Pokemon. So, we will see you next week for Finding Dory, which I know we're all looking forward to. And we'll see you next week. Thank you as always for tuning in. I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the Cat.
And I'm Brian.
All right, we'll see you next week. Taka, play us out.